Welcome to the Health Headliner podcast by Tudu Digital. Our content is informational only and not medical advice. Please consult your provider. Now, let's dive into today's headlines.
Okay, let's unpack this. Picture this. You're in the bathroom. Your phone is in your hand, maybe catching up on news, maybe scrolling social media. Sound familiar? For, well, a lot of us, it's become a completely normal, almost automatic part of the day.
Yeah, it's totally automatic.
But what if that seemingly harmless habit was actually having a significant and, frankly, a painful impact on your health? Today, we're taking a deep dive into a brand new study. It really cuts through the noise to give you the essential nuggets on smartphone use on the toilet. And its surprising link to a very common, very uncomfortable condition, hemorrhoids.
And what's fascinating here really is how often we overlook these everyday habits, right? We assume they're fine, benign, only to discover they can have real, measurable physiological consequences.
Exactly.
So our mission today is to explore this new research, understand the why behind the findings, particularly why this modern habit creates such an old problem, and connect it to the bigger picture of how technology, reshapes our physical and mental well-being.
Right.
We'll look at why this matters, not just for individuals like you listening, but maybe for public health conversations too.
And to guide us through this illuminating and maybe slightly awkward topic, we've got two key sources. There's a health news article from Medical Express, pretty much hot off the digital press, published just yesterday, September 3rd, 2025.
Okay.
And then there's the scientific paper itself titled Smartphone Use on the Toilet and the Risk of Hemorrhoids, published in the open access journal PLOS One. That's by Chetan Ramprasad and his colleagues from Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center.
Got it. Good sources.
So let's get right into it then. Hemorrhoids. They're incredibly common. We're talking nearly 4 million doctor visits a year, just in the U.S. alone. Costs over $800 million.
Wow, that's significant.
Yeah. And historically, we've always heard things like, straining or just sitting too long were the culprits. But this new study, it really zeroes in on a decidedly modern one.
Yeah.
Your smartphone. So what exactly did the researchers set out to discover? What was the goal?
Well, they wanted to provide some real clarity to see if there's an actual measurable association between using a smartphone while you're on the toilet and the risk of developing hemorrhoids.
Okay.
It was designed as a cross-sectional study. You can think of that like taking a single snapshot, a photograph in time of a group of people and their habits and health status all at once.
Makes sense.
They involved 125 adults who were already undergoing screening colonoscopy at Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center. These participants filled out online surveys about their lifestyle and specifically their toilet habits.
Right.
And crucially, this wasn't just self-report for the hemorrhoids themselves. Endoscopists independently evaluated them for hemorrhoids as part of the procedure.
So objective diagnosis.
Exactly. That adds a layer of reliability. And the data for this research, it was meticulously collected throughout all of 2024.
Okay, so what the study found next really grabbed my attention. They found that a whopping 66% of all participants reported using their smartphones on the toilet.
66%.
Yeah, that's 2 out of every 3 people in this group. If you're listening, odds are you might be in that 66%.
It's a huge number.
It is. And here's the kicker. For those of us who might think, oh, that's just a young person's thing.
Yeah.
Well, it's prevalent across ages. The smartphone users in this study had a mean age of about 55 compared to 62 for non-users.
Interesting. So common, but maybe slightly more common in the relatively younger end of that screening population.
Exactly. So it's a very common habit, even in this slightly older group.
And speaking of significant, that leads us right to the core finding, the actual increased risk.
Yeah.
So after statistically adjusting for a whole range of other factors that could also influence hemorrhoid risk, things like age, sex, body mass index, exercise habits, even how much fiber they ate.
Controlling for the usual suspects.
Precisely. Using what researchers call a multivariate model, think of it like peeling back layers of an onion to isolate the smartphone's specific contribution. Participants who used a smartphone on the toilet had a 46% higher risk of hemorrhoids compared to those who didn't use one there.
46%. That's not a minor bump.
No, it's not minor at all. It's quite substantial, suggesting a really meaningful link between the habit and the outcome.
So what does a 46% increased risk actually mean for our bathroom breaks? Did they look at time?
They did. And the study showed a clear connection between using the smartphone and the sheer amount of time people end up spending there. Smartphone users spent significantly more time on the toilet. To put a number on it, about 37% of smartphone users spent more than 5 minutes per visit.
Okay, 37%. And non-users.
Compare that to just 7% of non-users spending that long.
Wow. So 5 times more likely to be sitting there longer than 5 minutes if you've got your phone.
Exactly. It seems our devices are essentially acting like time warps in the bathroom.
Huh. Yeah, it's almost like a magic trick, isn't it? You go in thinking 2 minutes and suddenly 10 have vanished. I imagine this isn't like a new phenomenon for doctors, people lingering, but maybe the reason has changed.
Absolutely. The perception was always lingering, but now we have a pretty concrete driver identified.
Right.
And with all that extra time, the study also asked, well, what are people actually doing?
Yeah, what are we doing?
The most commonly reported activities were reading news that was about 54% of users,
Okay.
and scrolling through social media reported by roughly 44%. So we're not just sitting there passively, we're actively engaged, with information, with our digital worlds, completely oblivious to the clock ticking by.
That makes sense. You get sucked in.
Yeah.
But there was another finding that kind of surprised me, something about straining.
Ah, yes. This was quite an intriguing finding, actually. It kind of goes against some historical beliefs.
Right.
In this particular study's multivariate model, again, after accounting for other factors, straining while using the toilet was not independently associated with an increased risk of hemorrhoids.
Really? So all those years of being told don't strain.
Well, it's not that straining is good, obviously, but this study suggests that the prolonged sitting itself, rather than the straining, might be the more critical factor here, at least in the context of smartphone use.
Huh. So it's less about the effort and more about the endurance on that unsupported seat then.
Mm-hmm.
Does this finding track with what you've seen anecdotally, or is it a real revelation? Because I think for many people, that advice about straining is really ingrained.
It is quite a revelation, I'd say. While intense training can certainly contribute in some situations, this study really highlights that the prolonged duration of sitting, particularly on a standard toilet seat, which doesn't offer pelvic floor support, that might be the more critical factor driving this specific association. The statistical model pointed away from straining as the independent driver in this context. It shifts our focus a bit from just acute exertion to this chronic, sustained pressure. That's a significant nuance.
Okay, so how does that work? What's the proposed mechanism?
The researchers propose a pretty straightforward mechanism, really.
Yeah.
Smartphone use inadvertently makes you sit on the toilet longer.
Right, the time warp effect.
Exactly. And this extended time on a standard toilet seat, which, unlike a regular chair, lacks good pelvic floor support, significantly increases the pressure in the anal tissues.
Okay.
It's this sustained increased pressure that's thought to lead to the swelling and engorgement of blood vessels, which is essentially what hemorrhoids are. So it's not just sitting longer, but sitting longer in that specific unsupported position.
Okay, so the unsupported seat plus the prolonged time equals increased pressure. Got it. But let's be honest, for many people, the bathroom is maybe one of the few places they get a moment of peace to themselves with their phone. It's just saying, don't do it. Realistic advice in today's world. What are the experts actually recommending?
That's a very valid point about finding that moment of peace, but the health implications are quite clear from this study. Dr. Trisha Pasricha, who is one of the senior authors, she puts it very directly. She said, quote, using a smartphone while in the toilet was linked to a 46% increased chance of having hemorrhoids. Pretty blunt.
Wow, yeah.
And her advice is equally clear and concise. Leave the smartphones outside the bathroom and try to spend no more than a few minutes to have a bowel movement.
Just a few minutes.
Just a few minutes. And she highlights something we all experience. These popular apps, they're literally designed to make us lose track of time. They draw us in, keep us glued to the screen, often without us even realizing how many minutes are ticking away.
That's so true. The infinite scroll.
Exactly. And stepping back a bit, this study really highlights a broader need, I think, for healthcare providers to seriously consider these lifestyle behaviors, including our technology use, when we're discussing health concerns with patients. This isn't just about hemorrhoids, right? It points to how prolonged smartphone use in general is increasingly linked to a more sedentary lifestyle overall.
Yeah.
And it's not just physical health. Other recent studies, they've shown connections to things like depression, anxiety, poor sleep, maybe even an increased risk of cardiovascular disease down the line.
Right.
So this isn't just about one uncomfortable condition. It's kind of a piece in a larger puzzle about how our digital engagement patterns are impacting our entire well-being, physical and mental detrimental.
It's a powerful reminder, isn't it? That our modern way of life, constantly connected, always on, can have these unintended side effects that we're only just starting to really uncover and understand. What stands out to you most about how such a simple device, something we barely think twice about using anywhere, can have such a specific, impactful effect on a very real and, very uncomfortable health condition?
It really makes you think, doesn't it, about all the seemingly small, innocuous habits we've picked up with technology.
Definitely. But of course, like any good piece of research, this study isn't perfect. It has its limitations. So let's maybe turn our attention to those caveats the researchers themselves pointed out. What should we keep in mind?
Yeah, absolutely. Understanding the limitations is crucial for context. This study, while really informative, does have several important ones. Firstly, its cross-sectional design. Remember that snapshot idea?
Right. One point in time.
Exactly. It means it shows us a correlation and association, but it can't definitively prove direct causation. We can't say for certain that smartphone use causes hemorrhoids based on this design alone, only that they're linked in this group at this time.
Okay, association, not causation. Got it.
Second, it relied quite heavily on self-reported data, especially for things like how much people strained or the exact time they spent on the toilet.
The memory issue.
Precisely. This can introduce what's called recall bias. People might not accurately remember or report their habits. It's just hard to recall exactly how many minutes you spent scrolling yesterday.
Right. Our memory isn't always a perfect recorder, especially for these routine, almost unconscious habits.
Yeah.
Were there any other limitations that might affect how broadly these findings apply?
Yeah, a couple more things. The study population itself, these were adults age 45 and older who were already undergoing screening colonoscopy. They might not be fully representative of the general population, maybe younger people or people not undergoing screening. Also, while they did perform a sensitivity analysis for identifying hemorrhoids, meaning independent doctors reviewed images to confirm, there can still be some inherent subjectivity in those endoscopist reports, despite everyone's best efforts to be consistent.
Sure, some judgment calls.
A little bit. And finally, a key piece of information they didn't assess was how long participants had been using their smartphones on the toilet. The duration of the habit itself.
Is the risk the same if you started last year versus 10 years ago?
Exactly. That could certainly be a factor in long-term risk development, and the study didn't capture that duration aspect.
Okay, those are important points. But despite those limitations, the findings clearly provide valuable, actionable information. So looking ahead, what are the next steps? Where does research go from here to build on this work?
Well, future research could really benefit from longitudinal studies.
Following people over time.
Exactly. Instead of that single snapshot, you track changes in smartphone use and hemorrhoid development over an extended period. That could help get closer to understanding causation more definitively.
Makes sense.
Also, exploring actual interventions could be interesting. Like, what happens if people use timers to limit their bathroom breaks? Does that reduce risk?
Practical tests.
Yeah. And maybe even doing some qualitative research. Talking to people in depth about why they feel compelled to use their phones in the bathroom. Understanding those behavioral motivations could offer deeper insights and maybe lead to more practical solutions for developing healthier habits.
Okay, so the message from this deep dive seems pretty clear then. Your phone, while incredibly useful, maybe even essential sometimes, might be keeping you on the toilet longer than is actually healthy for you.
Seems that way.
And the advice from the experts, like Dr. Pizricha, is straightforward. Try leaving your smartphone outside the bathroom door. Aim for just a few minutes, focus on the task at hand. It seems like a simple change, but it could make a potentially big difference in your well-being down there.
It really could. And it makes us question, doesn't it? Are we allowing our devices to dictate our habits in ways that silently impact our health? What other everyday behaviors, maybe subtly influenced by technology, might have similar hidden consequences that we're just not aware of yet?
That's a powerful thought to leave with.
It's definitely something to think about, that call to mindfulness in our increasingly connected lives.
Well, that's it for this deep dive into smartphone scrolling and, yes, hemorrhoids. We hope this has given you something genuinely thought-provoking, maybe a little uncomfortable, but useful. And perhaps a healthier habit to adopt starting today.
Hopefully.
Until next time, stay curious and keep learning.
Thanks for tuning in to the Health Headliner podcast by To Digital. Like and subscribe for more health news and breakthroughs. Stay healthy and informed. See you next time.